Welcome back to SYNCTANK. I'm Andreas Xirtus. David Charles played Mkultrasound is with us. Andy is back. I know you've been running around doing tours, just doing all kinds of things, making amazing things happen. So I'm excited to hear what you've been up on to and what you've been doing. And then we also have with us cryptokubrologist Alex Fulton here. Excited to have you on the show. What's up, buddy? How you been?
Pretty good. How are you?
Man, I'm excited. So, I was talking to David and he said, hey, of all the people, I'm like, who are some people that we should get to talk to on the show? And one person, immediate, Alex Fulton. That was like, he's like, we got to get on that. So
that's so sweet. Thank you.
Well, we wanted to introduce kind of, because we talked a bit about cryptokubrology a bit, at least in general, that Kubrick aesthetic and visuals. Andy, you've done things on this as well, on Kubrick and Moon and things like that. So I was wondering, what is your relationship with Stanley Kubrick, or what does that mean to you? What do you mean when you say cryptokubrology?
Well, cryptokubrology was a sort of a term invented by a guy who I will mention a lot, but who's in absentia, who is Sean Fella, who came out actually on December 21st, 2012. He published his website, he published his website, CryptoKubrology, he called it, which was just like his first sort of chapters on analyzing The Shining and other stuff. And so eventually I kind of hooked up with him talking, and just because I'd all grew out of my interest in sync, and so there's sort of a difference, I think, between sync and cryptokubrology, which is like cryptokubrology is a study of synchronicity, and it's a form of methodology of how to study it. And so, it all sort of uses Kubrick as sort of like the linchpin to examine pretty much everything. And when you do that, it's sort of weird shit unlocks, and there's a weird kind of story being told. And previous movies that seem sort of obscure seem to become illuminated, and not just Kubrick movies, but everything. So I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but
I mean, you should just get really stressed about it instead of answering it. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm doing.
And Andy, no, you're good. I was just kidding. Andy, what about you? I'm going to do like a whole what the F for everybody. Kubrick, let's go. Andy, what's your first thought when you think about Kubrick?
Oh, the moon. Right away. Yeah. I've seen a few images, pieces of video footage that are pretty compelling to me, that suggest, and the focus of the footage was like, see, it's a movie, it's being produced, it's not real. But the thing that I noticed is the guy in the background with the red jacket and the scruffy beard. And I'm like, well, no one's focused on him, and I think that might actually be Kubrick. And that's my take on that angle of it. Other than that, I've just watched his movies and been fascinated by all the symbolism that just speaks volumes through him,
Yeah, okay, David, Symbolism, Kubrick, go.
Hell yeah.
I spent time at the Elephant and Castle archives in London and looking through certain boxes. I was particularly interested in Kubrick's Napoleon, or rather Josephine and Napoleon, and AI, rabbis. I've seen two separate talks from rabbis at the British, or not the British, the Jewish Museum in San Francisco, giving talks on Kabbalah and Kubrick films, and like had like a little bit of correspondence around that, and just like basically like I see Kubrick films as like original, like meta as far as film goes. Like closest films I could probably relate Kubrick's films to of old is like Metropolis, where you have like a story that's also dealing with archetypes that are so embedded and like something that we experience in our lives, and just like there's like really no point where like the film ends and the rest of the world begins, kind of thing. And so I see profundity in Kubrick's work, because he seems to be relating to like not just a symbol set, but like a particular like relationship to symbolism that's very unique. And so you can glean things from it that you can't always glean from other films. But then he's so influential to so many filmmakers that you see the same kind of, I don't know what to call them, but like maybe like archetypal tropes that just show up everywhere. And like if I look at it like is it 3-point perspective of a Kubrick film where you have like that kind of triangle that gets repeated, and it's so resonant, like with a Masonic tracing board, and then like where that comes from in the first place, not as like a Masonic thing, but like as a deeply like, you know, kind of arcane communication. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those questions. It's hard to know where to start. So it's like, whoa, okay, Kubrick. I mean, I have it.
Yeah,
yeah, legit. Al,
what was? Well, our old buddy Mark used to compare looking at Kubrick movies to looking at a mountain, or like it's just something that just has always been there and always will, and sort of defies the description, poetic description.
Dude,
its enormity.
Did we discuss Moonfall and relationship to Mark Leclerc?
I posted about that.
Dude, what the fuck, dude? I had to watch it. And like, you know, cheesy action film, whatever. But man, if it doesn't feel like they took our friends' ideas and just like not only made a film out of it, but like included Mark in it as like a character.
Yeah.
A caricature of Mark. It's so fucking bizarre.
So what's the story behind that? Can you
please.
elaborate? Yeah.
Well, yeah, Mark Leclerc used to run a blog called Wrong Way Wizard, who was one of the best and most influential and early sync blogs on the internet. And in terms of analysis of Kubrick, it's where it all started for me. He was a guest many times on Sync Book Radio and some other shows. And
this is pretty obscure. I don't even know. Is
you're not
still up? Did he shut it down?
No, he deleted his blog, and so that's not going to come up on any searches. But anyway, he had this whole theory that's in Sync Book 2 about the moon and about how we actually live inside of the moon, and sort of like a hollow moon theory, but that the moon encompasses the Earth. The Earth is a hologram projected like.
It's really hard to do justice because
extremely.
His articulation of like how he goes about like what his relationship to all that is.
That's Koresh Teed, right? You know, Andy, you know Koresh Teed's Hollow Earth thing? That one?
It's a similar concept, but the movie Moonfall, it just like seems to take. Actually, if you look up Moonfall and you look up the character, the main character, he's basically looks a lot like him. I mean, he's kind of like a conspiracy theorist dude that
he's it,
and
it's like the thing. It's like
this Koresh Seed thing is kind of interesting because like Florida, right where the Scientologists are, there's this place where it's supposed to be like near Ponce de Leon and, you know, Star Forts abound from Tartaria, where they said, hey, we found out this is how you see that we're inside of the hollow earth. We're actually living in this hyper density that's in the center core, and we're looking outwards from within. We're in the hollow earth right now, and the space is on the outside, you know?
Yeah.
This whole cult model of it. Is that kind of similar?
Very similar. It's very similar, except that the Earth doesn't exist, and it's actually the moon that we're inside. And the moon that we see is like the projector of the lens that is projecting the Earth. I think that's what he was.
Something along those lines.
Is that related?
Yeah.
Is that related to that idea that the crater shapes on the moon are actually like the continents? Or have you heard that one? That's an interesting one.
I haven't heard that.
Where
what's
the moon is some kind of like X-ray reflection of the Earth, and that's like actually, I think it lends itself to
similar
flat
idea.
Earth, though I don't know.
There's been other ideas, like I think in the I can't ever pronounce that word, anthroposophy. There's a book about the sun that kind of posits a similar idea that we all live inside the sun, but I guess that sort of brings us back to the moon, and in a way, that's exactly what Andy was saying, that associating Kubrick with the moon has been going on for a long time, and that is one of the key kind of cryptocubrological tropes that just reappears and appears, and it's hard to make sense out of it. You can make sense out of it in the Jay Weidner way of saying, like, Kubrick faked the moon landing, literally did that, and he was hired by the military, and that may be true, but then there's all kinds of other stuff that's very similar with regards to things like 9/11 and the Kennedy assassination and everything else in the 20th century that seems to relate to Kubrick in a really weird and specific way. And so, yeah.
What kind of examples, like with the Kennedy thing, for instance?
Well, I'll talk about 9/11 because it's sort of more spectacular, but and this is another one of Mark's theories, was that
Kennedy's head just exploded when he had that massive insight, and then
that one too.
No bullet theory, that was one of Mark's.
Yeah, and the Trade Center just exploded like that, which was, well, just like the relation of 2001, the movie, to the event 9/11 in 2001, and there's the Hilton Hotel, which is designed after the Monolith, is directly next to Ground Zero. So when the towers fell and everything was smoking rubble, you could just see this monolith there, kind of overlooking it all. Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, there's going to be more to it, but then because it relates to NASA as well, because of
that
the production.
Freaking monolith.
Yeah,
right. So the construction for the first World Trade Center started in 1968, which is also the same year that 2001: A Space Odyssey was released, along with Rosemary's Baby, which I feel is like kind of the other side of 2001, like both films relating to childbirth. One the Antichrist, one the Christ Child. They're the same length if you start Rosemary's Baby at the opening of the Dawn of Man with 2001. The same year, 1968, was also the year that 911 became what you dial into a phone for an emergency. Before that, you dial 0 and ask for the police, through the operator. And so, and the explanation that they gave was they were the furthest numbers on a rotary dial, so you wouldn't accidentally dial it. But at the same time, that's really fascinating that you have Tisha B'Av, which just happened last week, a little bit over, that you have the 9th day. We were discussing this on the last show, but yeah, that you have the 9th day of the 11th month in the Hebrew calendar. It's the day we attribute to the destruction of Solomon's temple. And not just that, but both temples and every major tragedy that's befallen the Jewish people. And so to have that, so we know the two towers are basically a scale model of Jachin and Boaz. There's a great communication of that from Scott Onstott, who did Secrets in Plain Sight, demonstrating that. I have this quote that I got from the archives that feels worth mentioning, where there was a letter from a guy named Alex Walker, who was asking Stanley Kubrick while he was working on Napoleon if he could do an interview with him about Napoleon. And the quote that was very brief, and a letter back from Kubrick in response to why he would not do the interview. He said, quote, "I can't be 10% honest about my views of people and events, even the way things developed in my career." Yes. So
sounds like he's being pretty honest.
So what do you think?
But that's quite a statement. I can't be 10% honest of my views of people and events.
That's an interesting phrase, people and events.
Right. Including his own career. So what
and
the
death.
hell? Right.
So what do you guys think? Do you think that he was like like an agent? Andy, what do you think? Do he's like an agent, or was he just
Kubrick?
Yeah. I mean, like he clearly knew what he was doing. I mean, like he's good at art. Was that why did he get to be where he was? What do you think?
This has always puzzled me about controlled opposition. I don't know if I've mentioned it on here before, but the whole cog in the machine idea that controlled opposition doesn't usually know what it is or anything like that, but the idea of maybe white hats and black hats, someone's in there that knows what's going on and is slowly exposing things to the public. But who is he targeting? Just specifically people like us that pay attention to stuff like that?
It's the hierophantic task, right? To initiate people through symbols that they, on some level, on some subconscious level, what it is that you're seeing, but you don't have to completely register that in all of its implications for it to do its work. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
There's also nothing keeping a conspirator from conspiring against his co-conspirators. And when they're like, oh yeah, nudge, nudge, nudge is good as a wink, who's to say, who's controlling, who's the controller, who watches the Watchmen,
That's another angle too, because maybe Kubrick, we can place him in the know at least, right? He has gnosis of some part of something, but what is that something? Are we talking about our story from where we come from? Are we talking about who killed Kennedy? What aspect to the psyop is a guy like Kubrick talking about and showing us, and how are we interpreting the symbolism? Probably all based on Babylonian understanding or something like that. That's where it comes back to, and that's kind of where we all stop and go, yep, this is what those symbols mean. But that's all the stuff, all the information, all the history, all the culture that we're given anyway. So it's all kind of questionable. I don't know if that.
I hear you though. I hear you. It's like Nostradamus a bit. It's like, well, why don't you tell us clearer or something? So Alex, what do you?
Gosh, jeez. Well, what I was going to say is that just going to point out that the release dates of all of Kubrick's movies, pretty much all of them, a lot of the bigger ones, more spectacularly, were all released on days that were really either on exact or very close to really spectacular world events. So Dr. Strangelove was originally set to be released or screened for the first time on the day Kennedy was shot, and they had to reschedule. And then 2001 came out the day Martin Luther King got shot, or right before. It was the same weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And The Shining came out right after Mount St. Helens exploded, and it's incredible because you have Mount Hood in the first shot of the Overlook Hotel.
Look that up again. Wasn't it 3 months or something before the release of The Shining?
It was 5 days.
No. What was it? John Lennon. John Lennon's death was a few months after the release of The Shining, which the book is named after the John Lennon song "Instant Karma" with the line "We all shine on." If you look at his dedication to his son Joe King, which is funny to name your son Joe King, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, Stand By Me, right? Didn't Joe King, right? I don't know if that's right, but it came out a few months after. But but Mount St. Helens itself exploded days before The Shining came out. So when you see Mount Hood, which is also a dormant volcano, and it's kind of enveloped in cloud, almost like the cloud of a volcano exploding. It was just that's what was really, really happening in the world. It was just sort of a weird coincidence. And then Eyes Wide Shut, of course, comes out on the day John F. Kennedy Jr. is killed.
Yeah.
And 30 years after the moon landing. And
on is it July 16th, 1999?
Yeah.
So July 16th, 1998, if we're considering that the cremation of care ceremony at Bohemian Grove extends into the night, then technically it's a year to the day. So the release of Eyes Wide Shut is a year to the day of the infiltration of Bohemian Grove by Alex Jones under the guidance of John Ronson. And John Ronson later would be the only man in the world with access to all of Stanley Kubrick's archives, as is made apparent in his documentary Kubrick's Boxes.
Yeah, that happened the year after Kubrick.
That's a pretty tasty. That's a tasty sync. So the same year that let's just recap that. There's the same year that, well, not the same year, the same day, year two from the day that Alex Jones.
A year to the day before the infiltration of Bohemian Grove was the release date of Eyes Wide Shut.
Right.
Okay. So so Eyes Wide Shut and then Bohemian Grove.
Which is also the Apollo 11 launch day. July 16th.
Oh man, I want to do a July 16th. Let's go to Wiki.
Oh, there's tons of stuff with July 16th. That I think J.D. Salinger was born on July 16th, and he's he wrote The Catcher in the Rye, which is in The Shining. There's a whole lot of stuff.
To the beginning of the Islamic calendar. That's what.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
What's
interesting?
Okay, so sorry to just go there, but so Revolution number 9 has the line that was misheard by Charles Manson, or at least the family, where they heard rise, and he actually said rye. Years later, he would be killed over Catcher in the Rye. That's a little weird.
It was very psychedelic.
John Lennon album Double Fantasy Stripped Down had the line at the end where he said, "Make him an offer you can't refuse," and he does a laugh. which is a reference to The Godfather, where they cut the horse's head off and put it, the racehorse, prize racehorse, and put it in the bed. Red Rum, at the time of The Shining's release, was the name of the most famous, one of the more famous racehorses was named Red Rum. And The Killing, the Stanley Kubrick film, is about the killing of a racehorse. It's a robbery around killing a racehorse. And oh fuck, what was the other thing? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to swear for this episode so we get the sponsor. Oh man, hold on. Okay, so is it something Curry? Not Tim Curry. The other Curry, the guy in The Killing.
Curry?
The guy
Carey, Tim Carey.
Tim Carey. Thank you. I was getting confused. I'm like Tim Curry. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a still. So Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They painted all those characters. They're like stand-up characters, right? That they all set up. And so there's other characters that weren't ultimately included in their final version, including Adolf Hitler. But Aleister Crowley shows up in the final version. But so does a screenshot cut out from The Killing with the gun aimed towards the Beatles. I don't know if it was directly at John. I'd have to look at but you can look at the behind the scenes photos of how they made that album cover, and you can see he's aiming the gun that would be at the prize horse, and he's behind the Beatles. And in the final version, you can only see like his shoulder and another part of him. But if you look at the making of it, you can see the rest, and then you can infer where he is. But yeah, that's pretty weird.
That's interesting. What did you say about Red Rum? There's a racehorse that was named Red Rum, and I think that actually it won one of the famous races on April 2nd, 1977, which is a 4-2. I think that's the day that that one actor, Michael Fassbender was born on April 2nd, 1977, which was the day Red Rum won the one of
so are there just so many things? Andy, what do you think? Are there just so many things?
I was just going to say, can we connect his name? Can we connect Fassbender to some like event that happened in his life?
Yeah, it sounds like one of those, doesn't it?
It really does. I don't. It just made me think of that.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No,
it'll take me a second. You go ahead.
I was just going to say that. It always confuses me when we make these connections. It's like, well, what the hell would all these conscious human beings be pointing to? Like, what is all of it?
Right. Well, it's both. People want to take a position. That's why I love Scott Onstott, because you don't have to do that. Like, you can entertain anything. And so he'll be like, okay, we're looking at the measurements of various structures around the world. Obviously, there's got to be some degree of intentionality around this. I mean, it's admitted all over the place. But then when you get to a point where you're seeing outlandish connections, you can't really know always without evidence where that line is between the way that there's an organizing principle that is in nature that we aren't separate from, which is genuine synchronicity, and that kind of directing of forces.
A mimicry.
And this is what CryptoKubrology. This is what CryptoKubrology is all about, because like early on I always compared it to Scott Onstott's work because of the like level of detail that goes into it and the amount of like actual measurement. Like most sync at the time was just sort of like things that feel like this feels like a sync, or it is, but there's no kind of replicability in there. And so when Onstott was doing like showing these impossible sort of alignments, it was just a lot. We do that to the dateline, the timeline of showing these impossible arrangements and configurations of events that are, like Sean calls it, traffic jam of coincidence, where it's like not just one coincidence, but like 30 coincidences all piled up on the same day.
Well, his work to break down Washington, D.C., that's how I got into Scott Onstott's Secret in Plain Sight. And of course, everything he did after that, I kind of took with the way he broke down DC is the way he sees the world, and he's just trying to put together these patterns and figure out what they all mean. But at the same time, he understands what the architects were thinking about, because they were trying to figure out what's so dang exciting about the golden ratio, and we're obsessed with their books about it as well. So I mean, it does kind of ring true that they're trying to make these patterns. We're watching that happen, but also that those patterns are based on patterns they're seeing in nature, right? Like the shell exists before man makes the golden ratio. So I mean, there's
like
No,
Just like all of our ancient structures, like pyramids and everything, they were literally just like building the divine into the physical and telling us that it's this important and we need to look at it for thousands of years or something. Like we have to literally bring this pattern into the most dense form we can for all generations. I don't know. That's one take.
It was Manly P. Hall who said that if it wasn't for the pyramids in Egypt standing there and elsewhere, that no one would believe it. So if they had been destroyed at any point and somebody tried to describe that, what that was that stood there, it would just be this outlandish thing. But because they're there, we have to acknowledge it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. The first question that I had, or the big question I had when I met Scott at the Sync Summit a number of years back, was I was really curious about when you're looking at DC there, and he shows how Albert Pike's burial site, where Albert Pike's tomb is, that it relates in a very in that geometry. It's in a very significant spot. It's at the Eye of Providence point in that formation that we were looking at earlier there on the screen. So, and so my question for him was like, did you start with that, or did it lead you there? Because that's a big difference, right? It's just like when you're looking for information, like if you have a conclusion, you're trying to back up that conclusion with evidence. That's different than when you're just compiling a ton of information.
Eddie's here. I didn't see you. I'm sorry, Eddie.
So that's something that like I really appreciate with Alex's work. Sorry for the third person, but it's like it's accumulating a lot of data, and the data can kind of do its own. It can speak for itself, and you can take it how you will. It's just information. So like if you look at Stanley Kubrick, his death being 666 days before 1101, January 1st, 2001, and 666 days after the first computer to beat a chess champion with Big Blue. We discussed this recently, but like you're looking at something like that, it speaks for itself. Do with it what you want. Right. And so that's actually, I was talking about this too. That's kind of been my beef with Alex Jones, because I've been into Alex Jones's stuff since 1998 or whatever. I don't care for the pushing of a conclusion and then trying to back up that conclusion, even if it may hold validity. That's not the point. And that was one of my main issues with the way that the media treated a lot of the 9/11 stuff. It was like, are we just going to, like, it's like, is it Judy Wood? Is that the Where Did the Towers Go lady? It's like she discusses that syntax error where you skip steps and you're like starting with what you think happened, and then you're going to try and defend that. And like, I'm not so into that. Like, and that's why I like that Kubrickology thing where you can kind of just let it stack up. And then it's like, okay, what do you want to take from this? And leave it to the person, you know? And Scott does that as well, which is why I really respect him, you know, like being on a podcast. I don't really want to participate in one of those podcasts that just has this really intense idea that we just all believe. And if you don't believe us, F you. And then we're going to do everything we can to like, no, that's not my vibe, man. I'm like, let's look at the data, you know, show me the data.
Yeah. And you asked, like, did you start with that, or did you lead, or were you led there? And I can say with like 100% certainty that I was led to most of everything that I've found in CryptoKubrology, other than saying, hey, there's something weird about Kubrick. Other than that, like all this data, which is just thousands of pages worth at this point, is stuff that like I would have never even begun to imagine thinking was significant until it jumped out at me. You know, you have a hunch and you start crunching it, and it's like, what the bleep, you know? And that's happened to me so many times.
For me, it was psychedelics led me to deep, deep places, and it kind of gave me this internal map. And then I came out of it, and like my brain had repressed the map, but I was able to kind of like recognize little bits and pieces out here in the real world almost. So I could like recollect what I had learned, and I'm still doing it 20 years later. So it's a bitch. But
they used to make these movies in like the late 70s, early 80s about people that had acid flashbacks and their brains turned into zombies.
Right.
I've been waiting for my acid flashback. Where is that, man?
The only time I ever have is when if I smoke too much weed, then I'll be like, whoa, and have like some real deep memory of like from a psychedelic trip that I had repressed, and it's usually freaky.
But there's a thing, apophenia has been tied to psychedelics, where you can connect a bunch of parts of your brain and concepts, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're making new subtle inferences from it.
But that's just criticism. That's just
I was about to
analysis.
say it's not necessarily a bad thing because AI does the same thing. We're like hiring, we're putting people in asylums and drugging people that can do that, but we're getting machines that can make subtle inferences that no one else would pick up on. So
Yeah.
I tell you this, like after I came back from Brazil, I was in Brazil with Graham Hancock for the ayahuasca, and when I came back, that's when I started to have a lot of time jump. I was actually abducted. I lost like a whole 2 hours while I was on a date with a girl.
She drugged you.
I think I was about to tell that story in the last episode, but I kind of dropped it. But it was crazy. Oh, should I talk about it?
Go for it. Yeah, Dan
Okay,
Aykroyd us right now. You got abducted. This is good.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to explain is that, I've been using psychedelics all like the last 20, 30 years, but knowing that they're kind of tapping around. You're basically doing a little mini time travel within your own little macrosphere. But what happened was that when I came back from Brazil, well, in Brazil, I can go a whole nother story about who I encountered. I can say alien beings, whatever I got in touch with. But anyways, when I got back to Los Angeles, that's when things started getting really weird because I started to feel the whole energy of the city, like the whole Hollywood, just like this black aura all over the place. So
Blood in the streets in the town of New Haven.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did jump to this story, which is one day I just decided, all right, and I'm back in town, and I'm just gonna go to a day club, it's like Sunday morning when people are still dancing. And then this girl I ran into, I wasn't particularly flirting with anybody after that whole Brazilian experience. I just want to do some cleansing, right? Then this girl just popped up in front of me, into the little Vietnamese girl, and then she just started dancing in front of me. So I'm like, this is weird. Nobody's ever start swinging around in front of me, like trying to flirt with me directly like that. So I'm like, all right, I just see where this goes. So we ended up on the date, and then this is what got really weird was that we were supposed to go see a movie. I forgot the movie. It'll come back later. But we're supposed to see a movie. We had a dinner date. So we were watching our times. Oh, we still got plenty of time. About like after dinner, it's like another hour. So it was okay. Just use the bathroom, and then we'll get on our way to the theater. So after using the bathroom, I went to the valet to get my car, and I checked my time, and I said, "Wait a second, did we just miss the movie?" It was because we were supposed to catch a movie like somewhere around 7:00, and it was really like 8:30, something crazy, like almost 2 hours. So I said, "Did we just miss the movie?" And she checked her watch, and she said, "Yeah, we just missed it." So that confirmed that she was feeling a little jinxed because she realized something happened, and she thought she was actually accusing me of putting something in her drink. So, and then that's when, oh, forget it, the movie's over. So we just drove around, and we went to the bar. We didn't really like the bar scene. People are harassing us. So we just decided to take her back home to Long Beach, and drove all the way down to Long Beach, and then in a little alleyway. This will all kind of come together with what Dan Aykroyd, he talked about his MIB experience with Britney Spears was on the phone with him, right? You probably heard of that story. So I was just driving into a little alleyway almost at our house. It's one-way street. Both sides are parked with cars, just jammed, right? This little alleyway. So I was driving in the middle of it, and also the other end, this big, like this like Crown Victoria, just started, old school Crown Victoria, just like screech into the other end with the high beams on. And then I was like, oh, what's he doing? He's blocking our exit. So I was like, what are you doing? He said, backing, just kind of adjust itself. It's a big car, and it started to charge into our direction. And I was like, what the heck? And then the girl started screaming because this car was starting to scrape. Started like going really fast, scraping both sides of the cars. So, oh my God, how many cars were damaged? This guy was charging towards us. So I started backing up. It's starting to become really dangerous. Like, what the heck is this guy doing? So it's backing up just enough to make space for him at the end. I think there was like an empty space. So I curved in, and then the car just drove past us. There are two guys in fedora hats with sunglasses. I kid you not. I'm not making up any. I told you I worked. That's what we were talking about last time was MIB because I worked on the TV series, right? So so that's what I'm like. This is exactly what they described him. You know,
Jacob's
whole
ladder. Yeah.
yeah, the adjustment bureau guy. You know, those guys were just like exactly verbatim. So they just kind of give me a stern warning. Roll down the window, stare straight in my eye. The windows were tinted. Drove past us, and then that's when I was like, "This girl, something's really wrong with this girl. She's a chemist. She was trying to hear my story about ayahuasca, like how I contacted aliens, and then she tried to formulate it. I gave her my copy of DMT Spirit Molecule, my only copy. I gave it to her, and then she's okay. I'm gonna mass produce it.
Didn't something just happen with Straussman? Isn't that his name? He's in the news somehow. What, I don't know.
What did he do?
I don't know. It's just the writer of that book was in the news recently. I don't remember.
Well, I think. Well, I haven't read up on his. Well, he has some new videos. There's some new interviews, but I don't know.
Strawman, something like that.
Strassman. Yeah, not Strawman.
I'm just looking at
two S. Yeah, Strassman. Rick Strassman.
Yeah.
You guys nobody read the book?
Oh yeah,
I read the book.
Yeah.
It's a crazy good book. Yeah. But of course, people in the conspiracy circle will say that he's part of because he said that his University of New Mexico studies was all funded by the Scottish Rite.
Well, he got really angry about or frustrated with people kind of taking one point that he had said that he qualified quite thoroughly about if whether or not DMT or the equivalent chemical or something is produced in the human body naturally. And so the idea is like sometimes when women are giving birth, or when one has a near-death experience, or when they die, or when they're being born, that the body produces a certain amount of DMT. And he speculated on this in the Spirit Molecule, and he didn't assert it as a matter of fact. At this point, we found it in animals. So we found it in lab rats, I guess. There is the DMT. And I think in urine, too, we found DMT in humans. That it is something that we produce. But at the time of its printing, we didn't know that. And so people asserted it.
Well, in his book, he specifically detailed certain periods of people's lives that DMT will have a release, which birth and death. We know those two. Especially a mother who's carrying a baby, she's having like a continuous serotonin and DMT release, and especially when at the brink of birth, when the water breaks or whatnot, there's like a huge amount. It can be detected in the bloodstream. Then I think some menstrual cases as well. And what was the other one? There are 4 points in people's lives.
The Masonic thing is really interesting. You guys may have seen this. I think there's an old article from Reality Sandwich when Reality Sandwich.
Oh yeah,
cool, about that there's a Freemasonic rite. It may have been like late 17th century where the actual document is from, but I believe it was maybe it was published through sacredtext.com, where they basically show that Masons were given at a certain level, whatever, they were given an Amazonian brew that they claim in this document was the same thing that was taken at the temple and related to I believe the incense of the temple, because there was acacia that was burned among the incense. There's a lot of ingredients that we don't know of how they translate in the incense in the temple. And so the idea is not just regular like, oh, we light a little incense. It's like, no, the room is filled with smoke. And so like, and I think
the ingredients you're talking about is Syrian hue. Syrian hue,
Syrian rue,
Syrian rue. And that can be mixed because that's a MAO inhibitor. The whole key, DMT is everywhere. Okay, you can take it in every plant life. Yeah, it's just a matter of deactivating the enzyme in the mouth, which is an MAO. Yeah, so that's what ayahuasca is doing. With the ayahuasca vine, that's what the purpose of that vine does is deactivates the release of the enzyme that kills DMT in your mouth. So Rick Strassman.
Wow, this is good. Sorry, I'm going to read this real quick. The attempts to align the origins of Freemasonry with Sufism have been made by a number of Masonic researchers, chief among them being hashish enthusiasts and members of the cannabis club Le Club. De Hachachines, Hérald de Nerval, in his tome Voyage de l'Orient, de Nerval offered a prequel to the story of Masonic hero Hiram Abiff, claiming to have overheard the folk tale while smoking hashish in a coffee house in Constantinople, or Nova Jerusalem. Sir Richard Burton, also an enthusiast of hashish, too wrote that Sufism is the Eastern parent of Freemasonry. That's pretty fascinating. Yeah.
Also fascinating is that the word dimethyltryptamine in standard English gematria is equal to 237.
Oh, no way.
Okay, Alex. While we have you here,
all right, I like that one,
dude. So
Alex,
okay. Can we?
Okay, so sorry. Can I just because
David
Alex,
for whoever, whatever.
Oh, okay. Just real quick, I threw it at Alex because this we talked about last episode, and I want you. What do you think? Because you guys just talked about Kubrick. I calculated, Danny Lloyd. Danny Lloyd, the actor who played Danny in Torrance.
Yeah.
He was born on October 13th, which is, the day of the Knights Templar arrested. The year he was born in is 1972, a year older than me. That marks 666th anniversary. His birth is the 666th anniversary of the arrest.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's pretty.
It might be missing by 1 year.
Let's see here.
But
let's look that up because I have a stickler for being Friday the
1972 subtracted by 1307. Right?
1307, right? Yeah. Okay. So it's one off. So it's like we would call that an inclusive interval.
You know what they say? The Kabbalists say for that. They say if you have to add one, you add one for the whole. So it's Aleph. So you add Aleph for the whole. And they'll do that all the time. It's kind of a fudging Gematria thing.
We do that same thing because it's like when you measure something, it's like from a day to a day. You can measure it starting from the first day or from the next day, inclusive or non-inclusive. So it's like there's like I've determined that there's like a 3-day window of like where you can kind of move it around because 3 days seem relevant for many reasons. But
okay, but I feel like some. Oh yeah,
you were gonna say something before Eddie asked.
Yeah. So just the phenomenon. Like, if people are listening to this and they don't know your work, they should know how fucking cool it is. Some of the stuff that you do. So like, one of them is where you take two dates of events that there's a meaningful coincidence involving. So there's a synchronicity between two events, and when you find that middle date, the exact midpoint between the dates, and that frequency at which that date will hold significance, that is something that perpetually fascinates me. So I want to share some of those examples because that stick out to you.
Sounds like a triangulation.
It is. A good one is just Kubrick's lifespan. So the midpoint of Kubrick's life came on November 16th, 1963. So just like 1 week before Kennedy was shot. It's also my birthday, November 16th, although not the same year. So I've done some stuff with that date, but that's just one. I'd have to think about other. I'd have to think because
you have like all of these images like set up. Like it's like you already have a book if you want it. I mean, my God, like
it's
I
true.
would buy that. Like I've tried to say, like I have a folder somewhere in my hard drive with like as many of those that you shared that I can just for my own reference, So I'm like, there's a thing there, and I can go back.
This
to
one, here's a good one. That's Well, hold on.
Alex,
Here's a good one. Here's real quick.
Okay.
I'll just give you this.
Go ahead.
Because we were just talking about Sergeant Pepper. This is. I guess I can't share my screen or anything.
You could, or you could tell me. Send the link in private chat. I'll share it. It might be faster.
Well, it's just a file on my screen. But
is there a way to share screen?
Hold on.
Okay.
I can find it real quick.
After this one, Andreas, I want you to pull up synchronicity about NH.
Oh yeah. Well, let's get to NH in a bit. But I really quickly want to also Andy and also by the way, hold on, everyone's here. Giant, what's up? Good to see you. How you been? I think he's frozen for a second. But Andy, I had a question for you because Nostradamus. We're thinking about these synchronicities. Some people are like, "Oh, this is great." I mean, some of them I'm like, "Eh." Some of them I'm like, "Okay, that's pretty cool." Dimethyltryptamine room 237. I like that one. But
that's nuts.
So you're a pretty open-minded guy. And what would you say is the difference between this and like the Bock Saga? Like, what makes the Bock Saga more than Nostradamus? You know what I mean? Because it's like formation of like patterns. It's kind of like Kubrickology. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it earlier. We were talking about all these synchronicities, and it's like, you know, there's a part of the Bock Saga that suggests that the word balance is ball and lance, and they're accounting for, you know, in the Bock Saga being the paradise time was before the earth tilted on its axis, so it's perfectly in balance with like the North Pole going straight through like a lance or a sword. It's like that is an English expression, like you could put that as an English word, and it somehow relates to this ancient phonetic language, you know what I mean? And it doesn't feel like that right there is like on purpose, but there's so much of what's hidden in our language that seems intentional. It seems like there's a human mind behind it, but at the same time, it's like Hydra. You cut one head off and 3 grow back. It's never, you can never grasp it. It's like trying to grasp water.
I just dropped a link in the chat there, just so.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. But so,
Not
but
that
all
we can't point to individuals sometimes in certain organizations clearly like spreading symbolism and stuff. Obviously, they're trying to mimic again what's like somehow seems to be like written already. It's weird. I don't know. The Bock Saga is too complex to nail down like that. I don't know.
Yeah, but it feels similar to Kubrickology to me. Like this
There's
idea.
a lot of the etymology stuff, the word magic crap.
Sorry, I was like not really paying attention. What is Bock Saga?
Oh, dude, give a rundown, Reader's Digest, if you can. I know it's a lot, but it's try. How would you even try? I want to see you try.
Who is Bock?
To try to put Bock Saga into like a quick back of a VHS tape. It's an entirely, you know, alternative cosmology of human history, and the interesting part about it is how the spoken language, the spoken story itself, relates to all these different aspects of history and rewrites them from the point of view of this sound system. This sound system is almost mathematical in the sense that all the sounds for every letter of this alphabet are intentional, and they have to sound exactly the way they're spoken, and they combine letters to make words just like we would, but through that sound system nothing can change. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well.
Even the gestalt shape of the letter affects what the letter is to be interpreted as later.
Right. So when they put them together with
Manly
other
P. Hall and Kubrick, it's really, it's like that.
Sounds
yeah, cool. And Tolkien as well talks about, like, Tolkien was obsessed with probably the Bock Saga. I don't know if he referred to it as that. He probably called it the Vainamoinen mythology because that's what it's referred to in Finland. It's basically, so this guy, Eeyore Bock, releases this story in 1984 to the world, to his friends, to anybody that wants to listen, about this saga of his family that stretches back to the very beginning of time, where Helsinki was actually the North Pole, and it was just called Hell. And from there, you get all this alternative history. What's that?
There is a city called Hell, and well, it was renamed recently, I think. It's actually named Hell. I think it's in
a lot of hell comes from Hellenism though too, because there's at one point Hellenism and Heliorchus were like sun cities. It was like the cities were organized and run by solar power.
What were they referencing in Metropolis with the guy's wife who passed away? I don't know.
I feel like both. That was kind of there.
Yeah, both is happening.
Sorry, Andy, I disrupted you.
Oh, no worries. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to get into there, but you know, they kind of rewrite everything from like a phonetic point of view, and it's nuts. They kind of describe how the white race was created and how the English language was created. And it was created out of these two original languages, one being this root language that is apparently, from what they say, from this guy right on the screen now, Jim Chesner, he used to say that the Swedish language now is what this root language used to be. It's morphed and changed, and most of the Swedish people have no idea. Meanwhile, the current Finnish language is this Vanner language, which was spoken outside of the North Pole. It was the root language was only spoken within this concentric ring system at the North Pole. This is also where we get the idea for Atlantis, so they say, where it comes from alt land is, which is all the land is ice, because after this paradise time, the Earth tilts, causes a massive ice age on the planet. The northern hemisphere is destroyed. All the lands were covered in ice. Iceland, England, just all these lands were covered in ice, Greenland. And it tells Atlantis as a time period rather than a geographical location, because they suggest that originally in this paradise time, this concentric ring system was all over the planet, and we were all one people, and we were all tropical, and there was no ice anywhere. Jim Chesner even would say that we're still in the ice time right now.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But that's to give you, that was more than a VHS tape. That was like a Criterion collection booklet.
Box set.
It is kind of similar though in a lot of ways to Kubrick, because he was a tour guide. He created kind of a system of symbols to explain Finnish mythology through Swedish, for the Swedes. And if you think about it, Kubrick's also talking about a lost civilization. There's also Route 237 in Argentina is in Bariloche, where Hitler's mansion is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And if you see The Shining, he's got the typewriter in German, and
Well, that brings up a whole thing. Can you hear me? By the way, I feel like I'm frozen.
No, I hear you.
Bock Saga also connects to like Hitler and the Aryan stuff. I don't really talk about it often, but
Kubrick connects directly to that by virtue of his wife, Christiane Harlan, who was the daughter of, or the niece of Veit Harlan, who was the Nazi filmmaker under Goebbels.
Did it say Adler on the typewriter? I think so.
I forget, probably.
So like Adler, a famous psychoanalyst, contemporary of Freud, who had a different argument about. So like Martin Luther King references Adler in his speech, "The Drum Major Instinct."
Yeah, it's
where he distinguishes between Freudian psychology and Adler's idea of what the primary instinct is of humans, and so the drum major instinct, the speech, is actually based mainly on Adler's argument around what is it that motivates human beings, and so he was saying, Freud felt it was sex, and Adler felt it was that's need to be first, and so he kind of gives an argument for the phenomenon of the othering of the otherable, and so in a sense you could see how that might have been something that Kubrick wanted to draw attention to. I don't know. It's speculative, but
Is there any coding to the all work and no play? Jack the Doughboy.
Right. So Laurel and Hardy episode Sons of the Desert, where they pretend they go to a Masonic event, Masonic like Shriners type event, and they don't want their wives to know. And so you have Stanley. Laurel is the one who basically like spills the beans at the end to his wife, which is very reminiscent of Eyes Wide Shut when Tom Cruise has the kind of breakdown. He says, "I'll tell you everything." He pulls very much a Stanley Laurel. But they say, so when the way that the wives find out that they went to this Masonic event is because they go to the movies and they thought that, it's a long story, I'm not going to go through it, but they thought that their husbands were on vacation basically because they faked an illness. And they said the only way to get better was to go take a cruise ship. And then that cruise ship sank. And then the wives find out and they're all distraught because they think their husbands died. But they go to the movies and there's like a advertisement thing at the beginning of the movie, and they see their husbands, and it's like a news broadcast, and they say in the news broadcast, "All work and no play make Jack a dull boy," which is just there's all these points throughout the episode that feel like, is that Kubrick? So I think I may have got that from Julie Kearns. Is that her name? The woman who did she's in Room 237. Am I getting that name right? Also, it also may have been Tracy Twyman. I can't remember, but one of them told me about this episode in a private message, and I went and I watched it and blew my mind kind of. But anyway, also The Smallest Show on Earth, also called Big Time Operators with Peter Sellers, that has a lot of Kubrick references throughout it as well.
Yeah. Alex, you had this tweet you were going to show. Oh well.
Yeah, totally. Oh yeah, so. Yeah, so this is basically so these configurations, we call them parent thesis, where the first start and end date are the two parentheses essentially, or parents, and the midpoint, we call it the child, in the child position. So this is on the start, it's the day Kubrick wrote Arthur Clarke about the possibility of making 2001: A Space Odyssey on March 31st, 1964. And then on the other side is the Apollo 11 moon landing. And then the midpoint of that is the day the Beatles began recording Sgt. Pepper. And it's 969 days either way, which is the age of Methuselah given in the Bible, which is 237 plus 732. It's mirror. And then you can see at the bottom, too, that the Apollo 11 moon landing came after 2001 by 237 plus 237 days. And the movie came out 732 plus 732 days after Kubrick first wrote Clarke about making it. So that's one example of a kind of...
You just put something out about being John Malkovich where you posed some questions, and I found that that was you, right? You just shared that?
Yes. Well, no. Well, yeah, I just tweeted it, and I was thinking about it because somebody had brought it up. It was kind of a viral tweet about...
So Being John Malkovich was released 237 days after the death of Stanley Kubrick. What's
That's
interesting,
right.
a few things interesting about that. One of them is Being John Malkovich's career. You have Heart of Darkness, which is the literal version of what Apocalypse Now from the Joseph Conrad book. But you also have Color Me Kubrick.
Oh,
where,
yeah.
where John Malkovich pretends to be Stanley Kubrick at a time when people didn't really know, for the most part, what he looked like. And he would just go, gallivant himself around Hollywood or whatever, and just get free food and free drinks and just say, I'm Stanley Kubrick.
And Color Me Kubrick was directed by the guy in Eyes Wide Shut who escorts Bill to the red circle. He comes up and he's wearing a mask. He's got long hair. It's like, so he was one of Kubrick's assistants.
Oh man.
Also, Malkovich was also in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, 42.
Yep. As the phlegm priest.
The Huma Kavula, whatever his name is. Right?
Yeah.
Is Being John Malkovich in the same universe as Get Out? Is that the idea?
I think that Jordan Peele would...
He would disagree.
He would disagree, but he's definitely, using the tropes, which are possession and bodies being used as puppets by some larger entity or force. Charlie Kaufman, that's in all of his movies too. There's a lot to say there, but yeah, Being John Malkovich came out 237 days after Kubrick died.
So I get, so the reason why I keep thinking Bock Saga, it's because like Ira Bock, similarly to Kubrick, these guys are, in a position where they're being heard, but they're coming from kind of a lost heritage, right? Kubrick has this lost heritage he talks about with Barry Lyndon and with The Shining, and the idea of Tang the astronaut. We all have these symbols. What is it that they're trying to do? What are they trying to seed us with if they're putting these autistic number patterns together? If Kubrick's doing it for Bach,
Well, I don't know what it has to do with Bach.
Why was Kubrick allowed to burn through film the way that he did? No other director in history got the privilege to do that.
If you ask Jan Harlan, he says in an interview where he said very eloquently, Kubrick had the freedom to use time, which is a super Saturnian kind of notion. But that's a good question. Why?
Can I?
Because he was cheap. Because he was.
Can I share something that's crazy in regards to the question you just asked? So, like, when I was looking at the screenplay proposals for AI in the Stanley Kubrick archives in London, I came across this point where, so you're looking at somebody's proposal, and then you're looking at Kubrick's handwriting all the way through, like on the side, and just notes, and a lot of it's just him insulting the person. Like, he's like, you're not even trying, and just trying to get something out of him, the same way he would do in person or whatever. But there was a point where he's talking about the robot in AI, the guy, and he was equating him with the Golem or the homunculus. And this is Kubrick's own handwriting, something I wrote down. You're not allowed to take photographs in there, and maybe if you're a student and you can make the argument for why you need it or whatever, but anyway, you can write things down. They search you, and you got to put your stuff in a locker, and it's this whole thing. But anyway, I wrote this down. This is Kubrick. He said, "Oh, this was very different from the alchemical conjuring of that bombastic experimenter Paracelsus." I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but anyway, he goes, who claimed to have brought a homunculus to life a few years earlier by sealing magnetized sperm hermetically within a vessel, heating with horse manure, the feeding with arcane blood. This was true and pious Kabbalah, which was underlined. He says, Yehuda stamped the word Amet upon the golem's hot brow, erased the first letter, and true would become dead.
You spell out the spirit cooking recipe right there.
So you're right. So this is really interesting because Alex Svek and I discussed on Always Record many years before I wrote this down. I found this. We were equating the AI of 2001: A Space Odyssey with the Golem and the shutting it down being the Amet. So Met, like when you see like Met life insurance, that's a joke, right? Because you're saying in Hebrew death. So Met is death. Amet is truth. So you change truth to death once you're done with the Golem after he's done whatever work he's going to do for you. So you can banish him or whatever. But that's also like a crazy thing with so like Barack. So when you say like Barack Obama, like that's Hebrew for lightning, right? If you add an Aleph to Barak, you get Abarak, which is the Hebrew word for Sirius. Sirius, traditionally associated with the middle column, so to speak, of the tree of life. So you have the sun, the moon, and Sirius, right? Because our sun moves with Sirius, or in the galactic center or whatever. But there's this interesting point there because you're like, Aleph is the first emanation from Keter in the Kabbalistic tree, right? So, and it's the first emanation that make up the lightning flash, which in European Kabbalah, and even I could argue why even in the 16th century at least, they still treated it with the 777 attribution when you arrange the letters into the 22 pathways of the Kabbalistic tree. If you draw out that diagonal lightning flash that extends through the tree, diagonal and horizontal, it totals 777. If you take the gematria of the screen titles for 2001, right? The Dawn of Man, Jupiter Mission 18 months later, and Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite, in simple English gematria, it totals 777. The film itself moves through the planets that are associated with the Sephirah of the Kabbalistic tree. That's really strange that like you have lightning, Sirius, the Aleph, remove the Aleph, very relatable to the Golem with Amet and Met. I don't know, just.
I love when you Google 777 lightning flash. Just as real quick, that the thing that pops up is the Boeing 777 being struck by lightning.
Oh, weird.
Which is ties into the whole this whole trope of flight. The flyer, like Danny wears the flyer's jacket, and there's a lot to do that. But the invention of flight has a lot to do with this timeline, the century, and everything. It
was Arthur C. Clarke who had this vision of everyone in the future having their own planes. Like he thought instead of cars, we'll be on planes. He's
I think
very
he was
optimistic.
The first person, I think that. Yeah.
No, he's the first person I think to really push it like a PR. Like he was like.
I feel like Jules Verne is under recognized here.
Did Jules Verne propose everybody have their own plane?
I mean, the 1880s, even his son, they were talking about the future being, everyone's gonna have access to. Have you seen the pictures of French Franco-futurism from the 19th century?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I started what I did with in the way that.
Arthur C. Clarke definitely wanted the American monopoly on that technology.
He definitely did that for computers.
Yeah. Hey, Andrea, have you ever talked about in the previous shows regarding the tree lighting ceremony for the Queen's Jubilee?
No.
Oh.
Well, can you go to because David, I want you to explain this because this is basically like lighting up the tree of life.
Right.
It's a very bizarre display.
Right. So, the Jubilee that they do gets its name from far in the past, ancient times, for the Jewish people. They believe that this was the way that they did things, was that every 50 years all debt would be forgiven and all servants would be released. And so the prophecy in Judaism that you see in the Zohar is this kind of explanation of the grand Jubilee. And that's their belief around what it means for the Messiah to come. So they're like, the Messiah hasn't come until all debt is forgiven and all slaves are released. When debt and slaves are no more, it's not a thing. And so that's why like a lot of Jewish people, when they tell them that the Messiah came, they're like, well, why is there still these things, you know? So in 1977, the Queen unveiled the crystal monolith, which was a rejected prop from 2001, A Space Odyssey, which was a type of plastic that had never been used like for anything as large before or since that monolith. So yeah, if you type in crystal monolith, maybe it's a jubilee. It's a, what do they call it? Silver jubilee. You can find it. I saw it in person a couple times. That's not it. It'll be, oh, there it is. So down lower in those images, it was there. So if you scroll down, see that monolith sideways. So it's in the shape of the screen, right? So it's actually, this monolith is above. They don't show you in these photographs, but it's actually above an ATM that has printed really large free cash, which I find really ironic because, like, you know, the whole ridiculousness of them having what they call a jubilee, which is really just a celebration of what they have with no change or anything. It's just kind of this, I don't know. It's for me, it feels like a meaningless ceremony compared to what the jubilee is supposed to mean. But yeah, they impressed this crown into the crystal monolith, and so this was unveiled on the, I think, 5th anniversary, maybe 7th, I don't know, of so 1968. So no, it's much longer. It's the anniversary of the assassination of Robert Kennedy. Was when they unveiled this monolith. Kind of weird.
Okay,
of course.
All right. So David, I want to use to go over this one, but this will lead to NH as well, because this lighting of the tree, the Jubilee beacon at Buckingham Palace in the front lawn, it happened on June 3rd, which is 63. I'm gonna have to go over that number, but
because of the Talmud, the 63 parts to the Talmud.
Yeah, Talmud, but also
what is this, Burning Man? This is what they do.
She was sent into an ambulance named number 63, which I go down. There's some more details, but no, it's not this one. Just go to YouTube. I just sent you a YouTube link, Andrea. In the Twitter, I sent it to you.
Okay. Let me see here.
The Queen lights Platinum Jubilee beacon at Buckingham Palace.
Yeah. Somebody says here Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. Lucifer. Well, it means lightning. It doesn't mean it's used in the verse that refers to Lucifer coming down. I'm of the not that I agree with everything Blavatsky had to say, but I'm of the theosophical mindset that when we say Lucifer and we say Satan and we say devil, we're not always we're only talking about the same thing if we all kind of agree that this is all just there's one evil. And kind of making a composite out of that, you know.
We had Esoteric Eddie on to talk about how Erasmus mistranslated phosphore to Lucifer, and Andy, you know all about that as well. I mean,
yeah, from a different angle. Yeah, I mean,
okay, go back to the beginning.
Okay, I don't want to play the actual video because I could get copyright strike.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because there's that whole double helix, the whole.
You know too. You don't want to mess with the Queen, man. I was told by an English friend who's a music producer that if you sample the Queen, I guess in the UK, you could be looking at like prison time. Awesome. Like you're not supposed to sample the Queen because she gives these addresses. You know, she's been doing it forever, and if you take a recording of that and use it for any kind of media, that's one you really don't want to mess with.
Has anyone gone down the Moses is Boba Fett, John Favreau's Boba Fett rabbit hole yet? Have you gotten this one yet? So I haven't
gotten into the show Boba Fett.
So I mean, it's hard to watch unless you go strictly for synchronicity. But if you go in for synchronicity, Favreau mentioned something about Moses, and there's this whole thing. You got the helmet that he wears and everything, but the Boba Fett's Gematria is the same as Thoth in simple, I think. I forget if it's simple or it's Jewish. But but the whole idea was that, he's been kicked out of his alliance, his cooperative, his kingdom, essentially, the gangster kingdom. And he comes back after being raised by the Sand People, right? And the Sand People are essentially, when Moses gets kicked out of Egypt and he's raised by the Lamanites or by the, what do you call them? Like the Arabs, whatever the group is that he's taken in on are not Jewish, they're Arabs. And so then he comes back with the skills that he's learned from them and he conquers the kingdom. and they have this entire series mapped out to kind of bring back and rekindle all these geometric, patterns. Well, I think we lost Alex.
Yeah, Alex dropped out. Oh,
I'm back. I'm back. I figured out how to share my screen.
Oh, there you go. Cool.
And so I wanted to share this since you're talking about Jubilee. This is an old one, but this is the Golden Jubilee of Queen Victoria, June 20, 1887. This is a parent thesis. So on the other side is the day Disneyland opened, where the plaque reads, "Here you leave today and enter the world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy." The midpoint of that configuration is July 4th, 1921, which is the date at the end of The Shining. So it's the great party theme. And
wow, that's a good one.
Yeah. So yeah, Disneyland, the great, just this whole idea of like transcending time in some form seems to be.
Eddie, do you remember what happened the day and year that the haunted mansion at Disneyland opened?
I made a post on. Let me see if I can find that article.
I'll tell you. It's August 9th, 1969, the same day and year of Helter Skelter. So the Tate Bianca murders. That's the haunted mansion opening day.
Wow.
Yeah, I made a post about it. And also this had to do with I somehow wrote something about Jeff Franklin, the Full House creator. He's involved with it because he bought the house.
Oh, what? He bought the haunted mansion?
Well, the Cielo Drive.
Oh, Cielo Drive. Okay.
Yeah. So
did he? Interesting. Now I didn't know that. So he bought it after Trent Reznor had it. So was Trent Reznor the owner, or was he just recording there?
I have no idea. Yes, it changed hands so many times, but I think he is the current owner. But and Full House, we Bob Saget died, and all these crazy things started to follow.
Yeah, Trent Reznor took the pig door with him, the door that said pig on it, and put it as the door to his studio in New Orleans, where it got taken away in the flood along with everything he had musically. So that was always the big kind of insult of Trent Reznor is, hey man, you'd be nothing without all this equipment. And then year zero, I put that album apart with the Downward Spiral, and I love the Downward Spiral. And he did that with like just starting completely from scratch and just showing like, you know what, I don't actually need all that stuff. Like, it's pretty impressive. But.
Dude, we might as well get in trouble now as we've gotten this far. And Hesh, let's do it. So.
Okay. Oh, all right. So,
this is probably
I know. I'd like to make it a little more dramatic, but if you look at the ambulance she was taken into, when she broke out a body bag, you guys saw the footage, right?
Yeah. Right.
It's just like she's not dead, and she's just like struggling to like get the hell out of the ambulance. And
which, if you're in shock and you're just getting oxygen, and they just give you some, what do they call that? The adrenaline shot they give you, right?
I've had to deal with somebody trying to get away from the ambulance when I was a cab driver, an old woman who wouldn't go along with it. But who knows? Yeah.
Epiderm, whatever it's called, the emergency shot.
The thing that was weird to me was the wig thing, because the guy at the store said, "Why did she come in and buy a red wig right before?" the going off on this drive, and she was in a childlike state, acting like a quote sweet little girl, and I thought that was kind of weird. And not just was it weird.
Does that sound vigilant citizen like to you? Is that what's happening there?
Yeah, but it was a weird article, because the article was, why did she go and buy a red wig? It was like they knew the reason, and they just wrote the article for people who knew what the reason was.
Because it's a red herring. We discussed this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Did you guys see the ring doorbell footage?
Okay.
No.
The ring of her car speeding down the road, 2 different locations on the same road, 2 different ring doorbells, screeching brakes the entire time, but the car was like, if anything, picking up speed. But the official report from like some eyewitness or multiple say they never heard any brakes at all.
Wow. Yeah, so I mean, there's that whole idea of a mega programming, it is what it is. But it's weird also. Then they said they kept her alive for her organs, so that she's legally dead before she was dead. And it just reminded me of that movie Society,
Ooh, gross.
And anybody know about the documentary that she was working on?
Right. Room 13.
Yeah.
All
Girl
about
in
human
Room
trafficking.
That's what it's called. Yeah, about abduction.
Oh, is that? It's one of. Okay.
Human
Yeah.
Start
trafficking
coming out.
movie. Yeah.
So it's like a
Lifetime channel.
Crowley. What is that guy's name? The guy who was killed, who was working on the like that movie
Vicky?
about like police state shit, and then like he
He just like vanished, didn't he? Or
It
did he?
was-
No, he
yeah,
did
there
get
was
killed.
a-
Him and his girlfriend got killed. It was like a murder.
yeah, it
double
was
murder
called
at his
Gray
house.
State. His movie was going to be called Gray State. you know,
Gray
like-
State, yes.
Yeah, it
Can't
reminds me
remember
of
his
that.
name.
Dude.
Yeah, very much like that. Yet at the same time, Jim Caviezel and others, aren't they doing similar work? And they're putting it out, maybe not through Hollywood, but I know that he's involved in that kind of work too, trying to put out human trafficking movies that Hollywood doesn't want to touch. Of course, he always spins it in a Christian form. So I don't know.
You know what? Another funny thing is that today, Mike Tyson, he's in a wheelchair, and just people it's all over the news. They're saying he's about to die because he kind of predicted that he had his own podcast. I forgot what it's called, the podcast. And then on air, he had his psychotherapist with him, and that psychotherapist was starting to get into human trafficking, sex trafficking, and then Mike Tyson, yeah, just keep talking about it, keep saying it. So I'm like, oh, that's not good. You're going down the wrong path. And I don't know. I think he's next.
Interesting.
Yeah, right.
I've seen him like start to become that violent old school guy again. All these stories popping up about him being an asshole in public. Whereas like we've been shown this like big huggable bear for like the last decade. You know, it's interesting.
I wouldn't be anywhere near him.
he has a cute voice, you know, the way he talks. It really makes you feel good.
I worked on the animation too. I worked on Mike Tyson Mysteries.
Oh wow.
But I never got to meet him. But it's just hilarious the way he recorded, because he can never follow the script. He's just completely lost. He just makes up his own line, and people are like, "Oh, that's good."
Can we talk? I don't know. Is this okay for me to just Vivian Kubrick?
Yeah,
I'm just curious of Alex's thoughts on Vivian Kubrick. Anything you want to throw out there? Interesting topic. She's been on Alex Jones's show. She's punched in the back at a JFK like truther event at Daily Plaza by a police officer. She was working on that movie, The Mao Game, or she did the soundtrack for it or something, and that was like one of the last things she did for so long.
She did the documentary. She was filming The Shining and Full Metal Jacket to make documentaries on them, but then had a falling out with her dad, Stanley, and joined Scientology, of course. And there's famously, like, Kubrick wrote some 40-page letter to try to rescue her. But there's, I don't know, the question is like, what was the rift that happened between her and her dad, and
right, and
what's her relation? And if you look at the way she's used in his movies, it's kind of creepy. In multiple ways.
Well, his movies are kind of creepy in the first.
Well,
place,
that's true. That's true.
So
but
wait.
the usage of her makes them even more creepy.
Stanley Kubrick's
But he's
daughter
not
is
the
a
only
truther.
Since you guys mentioned about daughters,
It's
Yeah,
like
she was
Eisenhower's
she had been a-
granddaughter being involved in the UAP community.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. She's like Canadian
She
whistleblower.
started out. She went and she joined org for a while, and so she did her auditing for Dianetics, and I think she got to like OT 3 or 4. Like she was like in there for a while, and it was into the 90s, right? Like that she was in there until Eyes Wide Shut. Like weren't they still? It wasn't even into that point.
It was short. I think if correct me if I got the timeline right, but from my understanding, she had cut off ties with friends and family shortly before production started for Eyes Wide Shut, and that's the reason why correlation doesn't equal causation. But isn't it fascinating that of all the people Kubrick had casted, I mean, he originally in the 70s had thought Steve Martin were going to make Dream Story into a comedy. I believe Eyes Wide Shut is still as much a comedy. Same thing goes for a lot of his films. But
if it was Steve Martin,
right? But he happened to cast some of the two most prominent Scientologists in Hollywood of the time, and you have a real couple too. And following that with Vanilla Sky, which we were talking about recently, was renamed Vanilla Sky in its remake version, which we know with Tom Cruise. It was like his next film, if I'm not mistaken, filmed out the Dakota.
Have you ever synced it with Eyes Wide Shut, David? Like just straight up Eyes Wide Shut and Vanilla Sky next to each other. We're actually overlaid.
Open Your Eyes I've played around with, but I didn't have any magic. It was just a weird, geeky thing to do. I didn't, but Yeah.
Well,
Open Your Eyes is the name of the Spanish movie Vanilla Sky is based on. So Open Your Eyes, Eyes Wide Shut. There's
right.
You know what? I'm just wondering about this because I remember watching a documentary of Heidi Fleiss. Remember the original Hollywood Madame, and she was hanging out with Peter Sellers' daughter, who I believe that they were partnership in pimping the girls around in Hollywood. And I don't know how close Peter Sellers' daughter is with Kubrick's daughter.
Yeah, well, that's largely the casting agencies, and it's as simple as a lot of parents who want their children or whatever, and people themselves who just want to make it. They basically get pimped out by casting agencies. So literally, like, there's a business in the midst of it. It's just there's
the reason why Casting Couch is like a fantasy erotica.
Yeah.
right. So that's the
other
argument
Hollywood.
that some people have made. I have no idea what Samantha Gamer would have to say to this, but the idea that Jack, because it was Jack Nicholson's home, that it's potentially Jack Nicholson paying for the casting agency, that this is an understanding, and so that would explain a lot, and also, that's a whole other thing. But
you were talking about Polanski?
Yeah.
Jack. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Was at Jack Nicholson's home.
Did you see that video I sent you, Andreas? A Perfect Date with Roman Polanski that Sean Fella made.
Oh yeah, God.
I don't know if you watched it. It's just all centered around that date, March 10th, 1977, and how
freakily what did you just say?
Lined up.
What did you just say? You said March 10th, 1977?
Yeah. That's
Are
the
you
day
Are you fucking with me, or do you know? I'm sorry, I keep swearing.
That's my mom's birthday.
I thought you were aware of that.
What is
you fooling around with me, boy?
No. What are you saying about March 10th, 1977? Because that's a huge day for me. What do you got?
It's the subject of one of Sean Fella's recent videos called "A Perfect Date with Roman Polanski," and it shows how that date is like.
Wait a minute! Did the incident happen on March
aligned.
10th, 1977?
Yeah. Which is the midpoint between the release of The Shining and the release of The Exorcist.
No, you're blowing my mind, dude. So Andreas knows this, but do you know, Andreas, why I'm freaking out about March 10th,
I know.
1977? Why am I freaking out about March 10th, 1977 from my own perspective?
Elaborate for our audience.
Hal Craig and
The
Message and ABBA and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
The message. So go and explain this a bit. I
can try and do this as quickly as I can. I might be able to do it in under 3 minutes. I can give it a shot. So basically, there was a siege in Washington that lasted 3 days in March of 1977, from March 9th, 1977 to March 11th, 1977. And hostages were taken. One of the explanations for the siege was over the release of a Hal Craig film titled The Message, originally entitled Muhammad, Messenger of God. And they ended up changing the title. I think it's still released. I don't think they stopped the release over the hostage crisis. But so I'm like, and it was just out of curiosity. So, okay, man, the context is that I started with Waterloo and Waterloo. I was like, ABBA's album Waterloo came out shortly after the film Waterloo. Kubrick was going to make a Napoleon film. They dropped that. The explanation, that's what I was looking for mainly in the Kubrick archives, was some account of MGM telling Kubrick, no, we're not going to make this movie. This is a whole thing. But anyway, so there's two Hal Craig films that bookended the siege, which the siege was over. So Hal Craig wrote Waterloo, first off. So I'm tripping out on Waterloo and ABBA, because you have, the film Waterloo and the album Waterloo, and what happens between them, and how literally this album relates to Kubrick with What About Livingstone, rationalizing colonizing the moon in the album. And so it's March 10th was the release of The Message. March 9th was the release of The Message. March 11th was the release of Airport 77, which is about a plane hijacking by terrorists. And so both of them are Hal Craig films. Hal Craig was one of the writers for Airport 77. So I was like, did anything happen on March 10th of significance? And what I got was a bomb threat that was apparently the biggest concert to be called off over a bomb threat was ABBA in Australia on March 10th, 1977. And so that blew my mind. So now you're telling me that there's another significant thing about March 10th, 1977 that I'm not aware of?
There's 100 significant things about March 10th,
Oh my God.
1977, but in that weekend. But one a good one I just was trying to find, but that on March 9th, the day before, that was the day Stansfield Turner became the director of the CIA. Stansfield Turner, and he's the 12th director, which is 2 + 3 + 7. But yeah, that video that Sean Fella put up is just points to that date as the day Stanley Kubrick was 17,760 days old, back to 1776. And it's the day, you know, Polanski sort of infamously sodomized Geimer. And that day, Geimer, the rings of Uranus were discovered by NASA. So you can just sort of dwell on that for a second.
Take from that what you will.
And then Giant, you're still here, right? Giant, you remember that band we just found? Everyone should remember this band but us, because we were just not part of the Mandela effect that would have had it. But Klaatu, have you guys heard of this band, Klaatu?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're supposed to be, the big conspiracy was because they only had the album that they thought they were the Beatles. Everyone thought it was Paul is Dead Beatles coming back. And one of their song is Uranus, Anus of Uranus. And it's, I think, let me find the year, but I think it's, it matches up pretty well.
77.
Yeah.
So
well, that day was also 42 days after The Shining was published.
1970.
There you go. Crazy. Yeah, that was 1980. So you're just saying the same date, not the same year.
No, the book was published.
Oh, the book. Oh,
yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah.
That's all right. It's 77, January 28th, 77. The Shining was published on March 10th. Is 42 days later.
Okay, so I just want to
pinpoint it that this day is also the midpoint between The Exorcist and The Shining release dates. And on the day that The Exorcist was released, Stanley Kubrick was exactly 2,370 weeks old. 2,370 weeks old. So, and then well, I'll stop there.
So I was going off the deep end, and Andreas can bear witness to this, because I was like, the thing with Hal Craig, I'm like, who is this guy? He's got a twin named Dick. Wrote speeches for the Queen, what the hell is going on?
Andy, have you heard of this thing, by the way? Hal Craig, do you know what this is about? Okay, so you know Hal in 2001: A Space Odyssey, HAL is the thing, and you've heard IBM is the letters after that. Yes. Well, there's all of these movies that are Kubrickian in style, but they're written by a guy, including that movie about Muhammad called The Prophet, which has no Muhammad in it. It's just people in the other room being like, Muhammad, he's over there. He's in there.
right, yeah.
Well, whole
it's misleading the way they advertise for that, because you think you're going to watch a movie with Muhammad. So it feels like they were like messing with it. It's like, I don't know.
And then there's water, and it's written by a guy named Hal Craig. And then there's a movie called Waterloo, right? Which is about, and granted, we've both been, David and I've been and seen the archives. He had a whole bookshelf, or what do you call it, like the Dewey Decimal System punch card desk, all about Waterloo, all about making a movie about Waterloo, right before he didn't make supposedly a movie about Waterloo.
It goes further than that. He had a whole library with note cards on each note card was a date, and each note card said what was Napoleon doing on that date, which is like this proto crypto.
The original title was actually Josephine and Napoleon, and he emphasized that he didn't want an epic film. He wanted a love story relating to their relationship. And so when you watch Waterloo, that's later. Like, he doesn't have Josephine is gone, Right. But there's like a subtext in the film, and then it's kind of like pushed even further than it already is with Abba, where you have this kind of like, it's very much like Dr. Strangelove, the way that, how there was that inquiry about Dr. Strangelove, like as to the subtext. And Kubrick acknowledged this, and he's like, from the beginning, I remember how he says to the final gasm, he relates that the whole thing is a sexual allegory. So he communicates that. So it's not like you can a lot of the Kubrick stuff you can speculate on forever, but he said that. And so it's strange that, like, so it's basically the Duke of Wellington and Napoleon, they have like this homoerotic thing going on, and you can see it in the film in the first place.
Just to clarify, this isn't even Kubrick's idea. get some paintings, look up Duke of Wellington and start to see, and there's pictures of them kissing. There's paintings from the 1600s or whatever it is of them. I mean, is it 1800s of them kissing? Because there's always is like the close relationship of the friendship that is supposed to be, and then it's for history. They've said, oh, well, this is just to represent that they were really in a good alliance. I'll say, but yeah. So
Right.
Kubrick didn't come up with that. He's just relating what's really history.
And so I was like, is Kubrick Hal Craig? Is there an Hal Craig?
And that's what brings it to the
conspiracy, right?
But I
like,
think I get it now.
His name is H-A-L Craig, Harry Craig. I mean, and once you start looking into it,
this is where it comes to the being John Malkovich thing with the puppeteering of humans and one person being many people. Or
you can't get in trouble like he did Spartacus, right? If you want to do certain kinds of movies,
and the thing with Spartacus is who wrote Spartacus? Spartacus was Trumbo, and Trumbo had been blacklisted in Hollywood for like the longest time. He had gotten 2 Oscars under aliases that years later they would acknowledge. But if you go to Hal Craig's obituary from the New York Times, you can check this out. It'll tell you that Hal Craig wrote Barry Lyndon. And my feeling on do you see it? Is it New York? No, you just put obituary. Yeah, New York Times maybe. But is it still available?
They might have taken time because we were talking about it, but you definitely have video of it on one of our older episodes. There's a point when
I mean, I also have like screenshots and whatever. But he said they make this statement in the New York Times that he wrote Barry Lyndon, and I'm like, but if you look at Trumbo, everyone was sharing scripts. So like even when you're watching like a movie that was technically written by Trumbo, the shit was passed around. So like if I'm going to be rational about this, what seems most likely is that what the New York Times said about Hal Craig writing Barry Lyndon, the screenplay, is true. And if that were true, then it would make sense that
he wrote
Kubrick could contribute to Waterloo. Not necessarily that Kubrick wrote Waterloo, but somebody gives you a script and you keep working back and forth. And he did that. Apparently, he wrote so many scripts and never got made into movies. And so that idea of there being a relationship there, really, like, because it's all syntax for me. Because like how I came to that was like through this other route, Waterloo and Abba. And then I'm like, wait a minute, there's something going on with the writer of this thing.
It's
like,
that
what's the deal?
that phrase, the ghost writer. Which is the
bringing up Polanski again,
the Polanski movie, and it's just the idea that there is something in us, in humans, or maybe in media itself, which is being carried along on this by one.
Right. So do you know about Nora could say a lot about this, but do you know about that acrostic? And so the Ninth Gate is based on a book of fiction called Club Dumas, which is that contains a fictional book, the Book of the Nine Shadows or whatever, the Nine Gates. That book is actually based on a real book that was first published in, I believe, 1599, maybe 1499. And so the movie was released in 1999, which has the 666 implication, the inversion thing. But anyway, so there's an acrostic in that old text, how they determined who wrote the book. It's like embedded into the text. So Ninth Gate, based off of a book that had this acrostic. And if you watch Ghost Rider, it ends with this acrostic taking the first letter of every paragraph of the first chapter or something. And you get that the woman who is married to the guy who's basically playing Tony Blair should have been called the Tony Blair Witch Project. But anyway, it reveals that they were a CIA assassin. So there's this. So the end credits of the Ninth Gate show fire. You have this burning thing happening, and then all the credits for Ghost Rider are all like CIA documents. So the two together appear that the documents are on fire, and just the same way that this memoir, the original memoir that contained that, blows away at the end of Ghost Rider.
Did you glean this from syncing the two movies, or did you?
Yeah, I have a sync, and that was actually the one that Andreas wanted me to show at the Sync Summit, and showed a different one instead because I said if I go on Radio 8 Ball and I get my question answered and it makes sense, then I'm going to show this other film instead. So I was playing along, and Andres didn't really get where I was coming from with that. And I should have done a better job of like communicating to him before I just pushed play of like what I was doing and why I was doing it. Because I went on Radio 8 Ball. I said, why did you throw the Jack of Hearts away? That was my inquiry, because my sync related to LA Woman that had the song Hyacinth House. It says, why did you throw the Jack of Hearts away? And the answer that I got, which is the name of the song that from the wheel that they spin in Radio 8 Ball, I got a song called Love Me Two Times, or it was a Love Me Two Times reference. What was it? No, Walking Out the Door. The song was called Walking Out the Door, which is in Love Me Two Times. And so I was like, wow, that's syncy as hell. I got to do this instead. But anyway, the film that he wanted me to show, which he had seen on LSD at the same time as me, who was also on LSD in the middle of the night. And he called me up and I was tripping balls and he was tripping balls. And he's like, dude, I just watched your thing. And I think we should tell everyone we're going to show him this, show him something else. And then I showed him even something else. And he thought we were in cahoots. And my thing that I was trying to communicate was what I said earlier in the show, where I was like, somebody can conspire against their conspirators. And I thought that would be like a fun way of communicating that. It's like, oh, I'm having a conspiracy with someone. Well, watch me blow their mind. You know what I mean? Like, instead of, just everyone else.
The Ninth Gate released, crucially, on the 237th day of 1999. And then the Ghost Rider released 666 times 3 weeks after Kubrick died, which is 1998, which is one less than 1999. So, yeah.
The Man Who Killed Don Quixote from Terry Gilliam, which originally in 1999, Johnny Depp was working on the original version that never ended up getting produced. You can watch a documentary of the failure of that project. So that was the same year that he was doing The Ninth Gate. He went, how does it work? So that movie, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, is exactly 11 seconds longer than The Ninth Gate. Take from that what you will, but there's definitely a resonance there, especially when you notice that the first scene of The Ninth Gate involves Johnny Depp taking a book of Don Quixote, basically like scamming to get that book from the man who had the stroke. And so anyway,
well, go ahead.
Oh, here's a random sync that I was just thinking about from the Abba Waterloo connection. It's just similar to me that I remember I was trying to download a Smashing Pumpkins new album in 2007, and what I found was the movie Zeitgeist, because it was of the same exact name. So instead of getting the band that I was trying to look for, that millions of people would be looking for, trying to pirate that shit, they came upon Zeitgeist the movie too. I don't know if that spikes any. That I don't know.
It's a clever way to get people's awaken. I remember when David did a sync of Smashing Pumpkins album with Melancholy, with the movie Melancholia, Lars von Trier's Melancholia. Ooh. And if you've seen that movie, it's like she's at a wedding, but the world's ending, but literally, and it's so perfect, because if you think about what that album was saying about society in 1997, right? Because even now, they had that, I don't know if they're still doing Zwan, but Zwan was their 2001 post September 11th. We're not going to be Smashing Pumpkins anymore. We're going to start. There's a lot of bands that started saying this in January or something, or December. They're like, I am like Limp Bizkit, Fred Durst. I am so sorry for making my music video on top of the Twin Towers about rolling. From now on, I'm singing Behind Blue Eyes, right? Zwan did the same thing, because they're saying, okay, this is the reset. We finally finished, and there was a big push to that idea. The 2001 was that, the end of the world, 99 to 2000. 2001's the new world beginning, and then it's post that is Shrek. It's all Crowley.
Somebody who says Chemical Wedding, according to Tracy Twyman, reminds me of Melancholia. Great comment. And in fact, that's the connection. So Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness and Melancholia connect directly through Albrecht Dürer's etching Melancholia 1.
I didn't see the comments.
I could go on with that forever.
Can you pull up that GQ cover with Brad Pitt? It reminds me of the painting of Melancholia.
But I know, Andy, you're trying to, you got to get going for your next podcast. So I want to let you tell people where they, thank you so much. Cause by the way, you're like my favorite person. I love you. You're the best.
All right. Back at you, man. Thank you.
I mean, bringing it back to Bock Saga is really key. Cause I think helping people see other examples of where artists have been pressured into hiding symbols and trying to align them is really key. And you always bring an important thing. Can you tell us where we can find the Deep Share podcast?
And just on that note, I love to see the difference between when that happens and, as you were saying before, the coincidence, right? Of when all of us are influenced by those symbols that have been around for so long already. That, you know, where is the death metal band connected to the Illuminati, and where are the teenagers in the garage that like the fucking symbols, right? I mean, it's a hard line to find sometimes. But yeah, you can find me at the Deep Share on social media. The Deep Share podcast is on all the podcast apps and YouTube and Odyssey and Rockfin, and that's about it. But thanks a lot. Man. This was awesome, guys, as always.
Subscribe to these guys on YouTube and join the Alt Media United and get behind Andy's whole plan to save the world. Thanks for being here.
All right, guys, take it easy.
See you.
Oh.
The death metal thing. Did he just say so? Fukushima, the day and year that Fukushima happened, I can only find one album release, and it's from a death metal band. I forget the name of it. You have to look it up. But their label is Atomic Blast, and just about every lyric of the damn album is related to some serious, like, apocalyptic, cataclysmic stuff. So it's appropriate.
Eddie, what was the GQ thing you want me to pull up?
Oh, I just want to get back to David about just real quick. But March 10th. Isn't that when the tsunami happened in Japan?
March 11th, but
okay.
Close, because it's 3/11.
We're talking about the 9th to the 11th is the thing. So yeah,
which is 2011 to 34 years.
Right.
Fukushima was 3/11, right? Yeah, Krista says.
Okay. But just go back to what I was saying. The GQ cover of Brad Pitt, like he's like almost like drowning in state of drowning. Like it's like the painting that Melancholia, you know, that woman.
So that's from Hamlet. That's Ophelia. That painting is supposed to be a depiction of Ophelia.
I forgot. GQ is the one that he was wearing the skirt, I think, right?
That was Vanity Fair, was it? I forget.
The cover, he's wearing like this crazy, like colorful shirt, and he just
and he says we're all gonna die.
Yeah, and soon after that, so I think GQ he was wearing the skirt. And in that, I think it's Vanity Fair that he was on the cover. I'm pretty. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But anyways, so this Melancholia, and then the next was this publicity with the skirt, and then he's interviewed and said, "Well, we're all gonna die anyway." So you guys were just chiming in on the end of the world and the Melancholia sync. But
right. Well, look at the director's statement for Melancholia and how he basically describes his experience making it, where he thought he was making one thing, and then when he was shown the stills and it was actually like this is done, he was like, what have I done? In his own words, he's like, I made a woman's film. It's cream on cream. And then he goes, I can only hope that there's something, you know, some rock in there to chip a tooth in this cream, you know. And so I relate to my sync in that, like, I'm like, is he talking about the thing, like, you know? But I don't know. It's completely speculative. But it's fascinating that, so basically, like, if you start them at the same time, you bookend the song Melancholia, which is at the beginning of the film. If you can play the full album with the film, and you align it so that song Melancholia ends on the credit for Lars von Trier at the end. So it's like this kind of perfect piece, you know, and it gets better as it gets more on point as it goes along, and it fits a lot with, like, if you know the Dogma 95, like, obstacles that he would purposely present himself with when he was doing his films, you know. Melancholy and Infinite Sadness is so Pisces. Yeah, that's probably true.
I resemble that remark.
Do you have any thoughts on the house that Jack built?
Yeah, I have a sync for it with Nick Cave's Let Love In, and that whole pairing would be my statement on it. But yeah, I mean, that's there's some really interesting stuff there going on with you know, my red right hand. So, like, you know, where that comes from is actually Paradise Lost, whereas the house that Jack built deals with Dante's Inferno. But there's obviously significant archetypal crossover between the two things, with Virgil leading through the underworld and the judgment of God and the right hand of God as it's expressed in Paradise Lost from who wrote Paradise Lost? I feel so dumb right now. Milton. Thank you.
I know that one.
Right. Which is also, I have like a strange, like, sync film clippings thing that I did, just comparing The Matrix with Office Space, which both came out in 1999 and also relate to Milton, as Office Space was based on a comic called Milton from Mike Judge, or a kind of cartoon thing that's similar to Beavis and Butthead. But it's Anyway, there's a whole thing there. I have that on the SyncBook website.
Giant, you've been awfully quiet this whole time, soaking it up. What do you have any thoughts on Kubrickology or of synchronicity?
The only synchronicity I can think of with the Hal thing is Jeff Bezos' birthday is the same birthday as Hal.
Huh.
What is it, Alex? I became operational on.
Well, wait. I have to look up. It's January 12th.
12th. Yeah, that's Jeff Bezos' birthday.
Right. Well,
Interesting.
He is definitely a weird dude. It's
Well, the AI.
So.
Yeah,
Isn't that the day David Bowie died? The January 12th.
Oh wow.
He died on the 10th.
Oh, 10th. Okay.
Poor Bowie.
Oh, hey, Andreas. I just sent something through Twitter.
Jones, Davy Jones.
You want to pull up real quick?
Yep. Let me see.
Because
yes, check this out. Oh, that's not it. There it is.
This one.
Tears such as angels weep.
So that's 5 days ago. But that's a snapshot from that crazy movie that's coming out. The Menu. Have you seen? Basically, this whole sequence is the angel will be dropped into the water, and it's just this whole.
Right. So what is it? So in Office Space, the main character's name is Peter, and in The Matrix, the main character's name is Thomas. And so there's the relationship of the disciples, Peter and Thomas. You'll notice that in Office Space, Peter brings in the fish. He goes fishing instead of going to work, and he guts the fish at the table. And so there's the story of Peter in the Bible where he catches all these fish by putting his net on the opposite side of the boat.
153 fish.
Thank you.
To be specific.
Wow.
Because
nice.
That's
Yeah. and
$153.
then Thomas literally means twins. So that's why they say that there's a relationship between Thomas as the Christ type figure, and so that's why Neo is named Thomas in the Matrix. And so the two strange attract, and the amounts of correspondences between Office Space and the Matrix is pretty damn uncanny. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I can see that Mike Judge wanting to take Office Space, and I can see that. That makes a lot of sense. Well, all right. I think we're hitting kind of the end of the show. Is there anything you guys wanted to share before I start to introduce where they can find your stuff?
I'm just trying to look up some articles that I posted. I didn't reorganize my thoughts.
You can just follow me on Twitter. That's all. CryptoKubrology.
I'll jump. Oh, you know what? I do have a thing before anyone disappears. Okay, so this is kind of funny. I told this story, and you can hear it probably better on my phone call to Low Value Mail on Danny Polishchuk's channel. So go watch that yesterday. But I'll just tell it again because a friend of mine called me from California who I haven't heard from in a long time. And they're a very eccentric, interesting person with a history, riddled in research chemicals and CIA following them around. And, you can never tell anymore. It's like that scene in Tom Wolfe's Extra Kool-Aid Acid Test where he's running from the cops in Mexico, but it could just be he's running from his own shadow because he's on a lot of amphetamines and psychedelics at the same time. Right. But so I never know what's going on with people like that. But, they've been living in like homeless encampments driving around California because California is like 60 or more percent homeless. Is 80%? I don't even know. Are you guys all homeless? Anyway. He tells me that drones are following him around, and I'm like, that's really? I mean, it seems kind of like I'm kind of skeptical still, but I mean, I kind of could believe it. But he's like, yeah, no, I mean, there are drones and they follow people around in California, and that they're looking for homeless people. They're following I'm like, I don't know. I'll look into that. So I go and I type in, does it exist? Is it a thing that really happens? And yeah. So there are drones as first responders for the police department in Santa Monica. I did the same thing in Santa Cruz. Let me go type that in Santa Cruz.
So we have more homeless in Santa Cruz per capita than anywhere else in the country, apparently.
So there's
anywhere near the beach. Beach. I don't even go to the beach anymore. It's just so pathetic.
Yeah, I mean, but so the thing is, everywhere you go where there are homeless encampments, but all over the state in general, they have drones that are in repetition. One repeats when the other one goes down, and they've got swarms of them now. And it's funny, you know, I was reading about it 2019. We're going to introduce a few. 2016, I think it was when some of them first started. 2019, we've got a bunch going, but we're only using them for specific purposes. 2020, wow, these are really useful. 2021, 2022, full on. This is the mode. This is the safest, easiest, best thing to do. Everyone's being watched and recorded all the time. And then we can go back and we can specifically have drones follow specific people to see where they're going, where they're migrating, where certain groups are migrating, and what interactions they're having, right? Did that seriously? Look at this. Santa Cruz. Oh, is this the same? Okay, it's a
speaking of drones.
Oh wow!
I gotta show you this one. This was just. Have you guys heard about the Birds Aren't Real movement?
Birds aren't real. Oh yeah, for sure. That's
yeah.
You know,
not really a movement.
They're saying all the birds are being killed. All the birds are being killed off to be replaced by drones.
Which I had that experience on mushrooms many years ago, where I was watching birds and I was like, "They're spies."
Oh, totally. Especially the damn seagulls, man. They're all looking at you sideways, pretending like they're not really looking at you. And like, dude, I can see you're looking
lizards.
at me. Stop that.
They're ancient lizards that have been able
just
to
after my
learn how to
fries,
fly.
dude.
Yeah, birds. Yeah, I mean, that's something I think they want to kill off the birds. A lot of people hate birds. Birds are dinosaurs, according to Wikipedia. I mean, in general, they're the dragons, and we've got them to a small enough Chihuahua size now. But I don't think people trust birds. You know what I mean?
Hey, the bald eagles are making a comeback, man.
Yeah, right.
This is a whole nother story. You know, I just uploaded. I know it's the last minute, but just see if anything's interesting that you might want to talk about. Just some of the recent news posts in the I just
on Twitter.
In Twitter, yeah, in your Twitter.
I'll jump on there.
Yeah, I mean, actually, yeah. Well, one of them. This one's kind of corny, but I didn't realize his dad was also in Chips. So I thought about that.
That's funny.
Okay. Yeah. So did you hear about this? Who they're trying to rename monkeypox into Trump-22.
Ooh, that's awesome.
No.
Yeah, well, that's one of the ideas. They have like 3, 4.
77 and 22 for 99. Or
get out.
Is that the joke?
Yeah.
That's good.
No, it's not a joke. It came out today. It was an article.
No, I mean, that's the funny. It's a true, but it's a funny. I mean, the funny is the 99, 22, and Trump. What do you think? What's this about?
People will probably think it has to do with Donald Trump, but it's not.
The off tarot deck, 22 major arcana, 22 paths in the Kabbalistic tree of life, 22 Hebrew letters, 22 master numbers as CDC reports, 111, 77, lightning flash.
That's not quite the lightning flash of creation, but the number that came out on August 12th, they say that's how many were infected, which is what is that? 10,000? No, 111,077.
Michael Carey says faces human pox, not after what happened with the dog. You guys heard about that, right? Like the French couple and their dog Sanus.
Oh, the gay couple?
Pox. Yeah.
That was crazy. I'm like,
the French couple with the dog with monkeypox that happened to be gay. Come on. We have to be.
But another friend of mine posted it saying that he was walking his dog in San Francisco and the dogs were like sniffing out the poop because the poop has methamphetamine, and the dogs got addicted by smelling it. They try to sniff it out, and it was, yeah. So imagine this monkeypox adding to the smell.
Oh man, and they're into those poor puppies. That's pretty wild. Well, this one
we're having a great time.
So Soy Jack. I mean, I'm not very well versed in the whole, the Soy Jack characters, but the main characters. But his other name is Soylent Grin. I just found out. I don't know if you guys know about it.
What's Soy Jack? Oh, Soy Jack. Wojak. Soy Jack is Soylent Grin. Oh yeah. And you're gonna eat them, yeah, because these people to be eaten. I get
Free
that.
Jack.
And then
the Wojaks are good.
Okay, so this one I want to talk about it because I've been. You probably saw my other post regarding Hoover Dam and the Hoover Dam explosion just happened like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I think. And then so it seemed like, and also this announcement like 3 days ago, all the news outlets saying mega flood coming to California. I mean, we have a historic drought here. what kind of a climate change is, like a, end of the world flood are we waiting for here? It's like FEMA announcements saying. So I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Well, it's suck if you live in a tent, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling that they're gonna blow the Hoover Dam and just like flood the whole place down. But and I don't know. I'm just trying to see if you guys have any idea what this.
You ever think about when they turn off LA, what it'll be like? Because it'll just go dry in like a week. That's the thing. And yeah, the birds aren't a real thing. If they tell you a lie and you keep repeating it, eventually people will come to believe it.
I thought it was that the rats were directing from inside the birds to collect the garbage. And that they're actually controlled by rodents, especially in New York. I don't know.
Nope. The waste disposal is controlled by the Teamsters and the mob. But it's a good. I can see where you'd get confused on that. Well, guys, okay. I appreciate these stories. Wait, Eddie, you got another one? Sorry.
Oh yeah. I don't know. Okay, one last one before I go.
Sure.
I'm just trying to take a snapshot real quick.
Can you give me a plug, Andreas, while you're
I'm doing the Sync Book Press. I'm going to pull up the site right now, guys. Make sure you go to the syncbook.com this weekend. Again, we're going to be doing another David video in the Discord, and also I think we might watch a movie with the German guy who was on earlier, Max, and go through the Erdogan movie about the Turkish leader, because he has his own Trumpian propaganda films that are kind of interesting.
Yeah, so scroll down, Syncflix right there. That's the one.
Go to the Syncflix, click on here. What's the movie you want to recommend? I was going to say Melancholia, but you got a thought?
Yeah, well, the one that we were just discussing. Oh, Jesus Christ, what were we just talking about? I don't know. I was talking about a bunch. The Matrix one is right down there. Office Space.
Oh,
Matrix.
yeah. Yeah,
we were talking about it. The one I think I wanted you to show on your thing is the one with us and The Shining and Saul Williams.
Just so you guys see, it's literally like you can watch both movies at the same time, and there's music playing. It's amazing. So
it's a collage. It's a film collage. So that just basically does a cross analysis between The Matrix and Office Space and kind of lets it all speak for itself. So that one down there called The Untethering, that's probably the one I was suggesting showing it, but it's up to you.
Whoa, yeah, we could do this one. This thing's great. So what you got? Us,
The Shining mirrored against itself with Saul Williams. So yeah, jump in there, you can get the idea.
Wow.
Which that movie relates to Kubrick because let's see, it's Jordan Peele. From Jordan Peele's birthday to Kubrick's death day is 7,320 days, reverse 237. Ooh. But then forward another 7,320 days, and it's the release of Us. So that makes a parenthesis midpoint where Jordan Peele's birthday and the release of Us, the midpoint of those two is the day Kubrick died.
Ooh. So Jack Nicholson's grandson appears in this movie. In the credits, he shows up as Danny/Tony. Because everyone has their shadow opposite, wow. So they have so you can see kind of what thematically what he's working with, and both The Shining and Us are both heavy on dealing with race, and there's lots of the correspondences between them are pretty ridiculously profound. So
yeah, that new one, Nope. Did you see Nope?
I'm dying to see it. Yeah.
Oh, how was it?
It's good. I mean, I liked it. Yeah, I'd say more than the other ones.
It's like alien invasion kind of.
Well, I don't want to spoil it. It takes a different path. It's a different interpretation of UFO stuff. It's more like an organism. It's not like it's like a Trevor Constable style macro entity, but it's also about a lot of other stuff. So
cool.
It's really
sorry, guys, my computer's chugging along here, but I'm trying. CryptoKubrology is Alex Fulton, and you can get his YouTube channel here as well.
That's Sean's YouTube channel, just to be clear. That's Sean's, and he makes all his videos. He kind of credits both of us, even though he does all the editing work, because we're kind of partners in research. So that's my Twitter page, and then if you go to YouTube, you'll find 7 or 8 videos, 2 of which include me talking. But all of which have my name on them about Crypto K and analyzing various different. There's one that's called 8 uses of 237 before The Shining. So we've gone through all these movies and found people saying 237 in other movies before The Shining came out, and how it all ties together. And there's a bunch of videos up there too, so which are really amazing. He does incredibly detailed work. That takes it requires a lot of patience and a lot of freeze framing and kind of studying, but it is worth it because he points out some really amazing syncs.
Wow, yeah, this is great.
Alex, just one last question regarding Kubrick. I mean, has any of you followed the Dakota Access Pipeline? You know, the where they're trying to open up the oil reserve.
Of course.
That, you know, it starts from Stanley. You know, that pipeline starts from the town Stanley.
Well,
And it's in the shape of a Calumet. You know the Indian pipe, the peace pipe.
Well, yeah. I mean, that name Stanley kind of has become like I don't want to call it, a recurring thing that just pops up. Like the thing that's coming to mind is the Berenstein creators, Stan and Jan Berenstein, by the way, and Stanley and Jan Irvin is his stepbrother. So Stan and Jan Berenstein.
I love how you're saying Berenstein right now. You are just a trad. That's awesome.
I don't know. I'm just saying what
it's Berenstein. You've heard, right?
It's Stain. Yeah, no, totally. It's absolutely.
Mandala effect. Yeah.
I forgot which one it was.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
it's always been Berenstein.
But what was I going to say? So it's Stan and Jan. So it was Stanley, but then I can't remember exactly, but I think on one of their midpoints is like the day Stanleyville was invaded by the British in Africa, something along those lines. So Stanley it's like a recurring thing. It's just like Kubrick, or it's this entity Stanley is somehow behind all the curtains. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that it starts from Stanley. It does. All of it starts from Stanley.
My God. Eddie, I'm going to show them your site. Guys, go to the Synchronous. If you didn't know, there's now a Discord as well. Aside from my Discord, there is a Synchronous Discord. SYNCTANK Discord. Oh, that's the SYNCTANK Discord, not Synchronous. But still, join both. It's cool. But keep doing your best to like post, to these connections, because getting these things and tying them together is, a lot of people are like, hey, what's going on? Well, this is kind of, if you're going to try to find any actual causality to correlation, you have to start with understanding all the correlation. So that's huge.
So I just encourage people to join and just put on post whatever they see. I mean, a lot of people will question, hey, there's no sync in that. I said, well, just post whatever, and we'll connect the dots later.
Right? Yeah, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that there's causality yet. The thing is, you'll find, and that's what I find most interesting about AI is, again, it's finding causality in the most strange ways. It's that chaos, Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park, like things, you don't always know all the little pieces of everything. So the more you know, the more like, oh, okay.
So what was Carl Jung's book where he coined the term synchronicity? What was it called? It's called Synchronicity and a Causal Principle, meaning that you have to determine a cause to find meaning. That being said, if you're following any given synchronicity, you may come to a point where you find indication of a causal connection. Then that's a correspondence, and the rationale or the intention behind it is generally debatable. But see where they lead.
Nothing's accident, really. If you find it,
if you're in the blocking school of thought that accidents never happen, but yes. Yeah.
And legit,
it's ultimately true. And then there's relative truth,
And Giant, I know that they're to find you on Twitter and on the Discord, and you've got a YouTube channel as well through the Giant Watery, and you're going to be here again soon. I'm sorry that you came in late and we didn't get to get more of you, but we'll definitely get started next time, because I know you have a lot of synchronicity stuff to talk about with David as well as with Noel. So I'm going to try also get you guys and Noel together so we can go full Veda. I think that would be that's going to be fun. Veda wave, All right, guys, thanks for being here, and we'll see you next week. That's freaking awesome. Thanks a lot.
All right. Hey,
Thanks.
Okay.